Eons before humanity began to gaze at the stars, the cosmos was ruled by the elder gods, beings of immense power who shaped galaxies and seeded life across countless worlds. Their forms were incomprehensible to mortal minds, their motives beyond the grasp of even the most advanced civilizations. Yet, despite their omnipotence, a shadow lingered over their dominion, a prophecy etched into the very fabric of the universe. The prophecy spoke of a species unlike any other. Born on a fragile, watery planet orbiting an insignificant star, this species would rise from the dust, unshackled by the limits of biology or the constraints of divine intervention. They would possess the ability to defy the natural order, to bend reality itself to their will, and to challenge even the mightiest of gods. The elder gods, for all their power, were not immune to fear. They sealed the prophecy in the vault of infinite truths, hidden within a black hole at the center of their grand council. Only the highest among them, the celestial triumvirate, knew its full contents. To the rest, whispers of the forbidden ones became a cautionary tale, a warning to never interfere with the blue planet called Earth. Millennia passed. The elder gods continued their rule, shaping and destroying civilizations as they saw fit. Yet, Earth remained untouched, a singular anomaly in the grand tapestry of the universe. Some gods, curious about the forbidden planet, speculated about its significance. Others dismissed it as unworthy of their attention, a mere speck in the cosmic ocean. One of the youngest gods, Lyr-Vathos, was among the curious. Unlike his elders, who saw mortals as playthings or tools, he felt an insatiable desire to understand them. He had heard tales of humans, small, fragile creatures who nonetheless built cities, created art, and waged wars with an intensity that rivaled the stars themselves. What made them so dangerous that even the elder gods dared not approach? Lyr-Vathos sought answers in the great library of eternity, a repository of all knowledge gathered by the gods. He found fragments of texts that hinted at humanity's peculiar nature, their boundless creativity, their relentless drive to overcome adversity, and their unique ability to turn weakness into strength. But the deeper he delved, the more questions he uncovered. Why did humans progress so rapidly compared to other species? Why did they possess an innate defiance, a refusal to bow to any higher power? And why, above all, did the elder gods fear them? His curiosity grew into obsession. Ignoring the warnings of his elders, Lyr-Vathos decided to witness humanity firsthand. Disguising himself as a mortal, he descended to Earth, choosing a bustling city as his observation point. What he saw astounded him. Humans were not the most advanced species he had encountered, far from it. Their technology was primitive compared to the wonders of the cosmos. Their bodies were frail, susceptible to disease and injury. Yet, there was something in their eyes, a spark he had never seen before. It was a spark of determination, of unyielding willpower, of an unshakable belief that they could achieve the impossible. Lyr-Vathos observed them creating art that conveyed emotions he couldn't fully comprehend. He watched them invent machines that defied nature's limitations. He saw them stand together against forces far greater than themselves, refusing to surrender even in the face of certain doom. But what struck him most was their audacity. Humans dared to question everything, even the very fabric of their existence. They sought to uncover the mysteries of the universe, to understand forces far beyond their comprehension. They were dreamers and rebels, creators and destroyers, a paradox in motion. For the first time in his eternal life, Lyr-Vathos felt a chill of fear. The elder gods were right to be wary. Humanity was not dangerous because of their strength or knowledge. They were dangerous because they refused to accept limits. Returning to the celestial realm, Lyr-Vathos reported his findings to the celestial triumvirate. The council chamber, a vast expanse of swirling stars and shifting dimensions, fell silent as he spoke. The gods listened, their expressions inscrutable. When he finished, the leader of the triumvirate, Kael'Zoreth, rose from his throne of light. "You have seen what we have long known," Kael'Zoreth said, his voice reverberating through the chamber like the tolling of a cosmic bell. Humanity is a threat not because they are powerful, but because they possess the potential to become so. They are creators of their own destiny, unbound by the rules we impose. If left unchecked, they will rise to challenge us, and they may succeed. A murmur of unease rippled through the gathered gods. Some called for immediate action, urging the destruction of Earth before humanity could fulfill its potential. Others argued for a more cautious approach, fearing that any interference might accelerate their development. In the end, the triumvirate decreed that Earth would remain under observation but untouched. Any god who disobeyed this order would face annihilation. The risk of humanity's rise was great, but the risk of provoking them prematurely was greater. Thus, the elder gods retreated to their realms, leaving Earth to its own devices. But in their hearts, a seed of fear had been planted, a fear that would grow with each passing century, as humanity inched closer to the stars. For millennia, the elder gods had adhered to the sacred decree: no god was to approach the forbidden world of Earth. Yet among the pantheon, curiosity brewed. Stories of the humans, creatures so audacious they defied their own limitations, were like embers stoking the fires of youthful arrogance. The gods debated in hushed tones, their voices reverberating in the void of celestial halls, but none dared break the law. None, except Nyarthalix. Nyarthalix was among the youngest of the elder gods, a scion born of Yltharion, the keeper of stars. Reckless and proud, Nyarthalix had grown weary of ancient prohibitions and cosmic caution. Earth was a whisper in the void, an anomaly left untouched, while entire civilizations were molded and broken by divine will. Why? What made humanity so special? Disguising his descent as a meteor streaking across the heavens, Nyarthalix pierced the atmosphere of Earth. His form, a radiant orb of swirling energy, plunged into a dense forest, shaking the ground with the force of his arrival. Trees cracked and toppled, the surrounding area engulfed in a storm of displaced air and light. To the mortals, it was a celestial event, a sign from the heavens. Word of the phenomenon spread quickly, and a team of researchers was dispatched to investigate. Among them was Dr. Elena Voss, a brilliant astrophysicist known for her unorthodox theories about extraterrestrial life. For years, she had argued that humanity was not alone and that they were being observed by forces far greater than themselves. When news of the meteor's landing reached her, she saw it as an opportunity to prove her theories right. The team arrived at the crash site under the cover of night. The forest was eerily silent, save for the faint hum emanating from the glowing crater. In its center lay a spherical object, black as obsidian yet pulsing with an ethereal light. The air around it crackled with energy, causing their instruments to flicker and malfunction. "This isn't just a meteor," Elena muttered, her voice trembling with a mixture of awe and apprehension. "It's something else." Unbeknownst to them, Nyarthalix was watching. He observed the mortals with a mixture of curiosity and contempt. Their frail forms moved cautiously, their primitive technology struggling to comprehend his presence. Yet, there was something about their expressions, an intensity, a determination, that gave him pause. Stepping forward, Elena raised a hand to touch the sphere, ignoring the warnings of her colleagues. As her fingers brushed the surface, a surge of energy rippled outward, forcing everyone to stagger back. The sphere began to shift, its surface warping and folding until it dissolved into light. From the center emerged a figure, Nyarthalix, in a form that mimicked humanity yet radiated otherworldly power. The mortals froze, their eyes wide with fear and awe. Nyarthalix stood tall, his shimmering body a cascade of light and shadow. His voice echoed, not through sound but through their minds, a thunderous presence that demanded submission. "I am Nyarthalix," he declared. "Scion of the eternal pantheon, keeper of infinite truths. Kneel before your god." But no one knelt. Instead, Elena stepped forward, her gaze steady, despite the trembling of her hands. "You may call yourself a god," she said, her voice carrying a defiant edge, "but that doesn't mean we'll bow to you. We've faced threats before. We'll face you, too." Nyarthalix's expression flickered with surprise. In all his existence, no mortal had ever spoken to him with such boldness. He raised a hand, summoning a sphere of energy that crackled with lethal intent. "You dare defy me?" he thundered. "I could unmake you with a thought." Elena didn't flinch. Instead, she glanced at her team and nodded. They scrambled to activate a device they had brought along, a prototype energy disperser designed for asteroid mining. The machine hummed to life, emitting a low-frequency pulse that resonated through the air. When the pulse struck Thalix, he recoiled, his form flickering as if destabilized. For the first time, he felt something entirely foreign to him, pain. "You're not invincible," Elena said, her voice firm. "And we're not as weak as you think." Enraged, Thalix unleashed a storm of energy, obliterating the surrounding trees and sending the humans sprawling. Yet, even as the ground shook and the air burned, the mortals fought back. They adapted, using their tools and wits to counter his attacks. One of the researchers, a technician named Arjun, recalibrated the disperser to emit a higher frequency pulse. The device emitted a piercing sound, and Thalix stumbled, his energy flickering erratically. How are they doing this, he thought, bewildered. These creatures, so insignificant in the grand scale of the universe, were forcing him to retreat. Realizing he was losing control, Thalix decided to end the confrontation. With a final burst of energy, he disrupted the disperser and ascended into the sky, leaving the mortals battered but alive. As he returned to the celestial realm, Thalix's thoughts churned. Humanity was not what he had expected. They were not submissive like other species, nor were they awed into inaction by his power. Instead, they had met him with defiance, innovation, and an unyielding will to survive. When he arrived at the Council of the Elder Gods, he was summoned before the celestial triumvirate. His father, Yltharion, glared at him with an intensity that could collapse stars. "You disobeyed the sacred decree," Yltharion said, his voice a rumble of suppressed fury. "You jeopardized the balance of the cosmos with your arrogance." "But father," Thalix protested, "the humans, they are unlike any species we've encountered. They fought me, and they nearly won." The chamber fell silent. The gods exchanged uneasy glances, their radiant forms dimming slightly as they processed his words. Kael'Zorith, the leader of the triumvirate, spoke at last. "You have seen what we have long feared," he said, his voice heavy with gravity. "Humanity is not a threat because of their power, but because of their potential. They defy the natural order. They adapt, they innovate, and they resist. This is why we forbade contact, for any interference might accelerate their rise." Thalix lowered his gaze, the weight of his actions sinking in. He had thought himself invincible, a god among mortals. But he had underestimated humanity, and in doing so, he had given them a glimpse of the forces watching from the stars. As the council debated the implications of his actions, Thalix remained silent, his mind replaying the events on Earth. For the first time in his eternal life, he understood why the elder gods feared humanity. They were not just another species. They were a storm on the horizon, gathering strength with each passing moment. And one day, that storm would reach the heavens. The encounter between Thalix and humanity left an indelible mark, not just on the elder gods, but on Earth itself. The humans who survived the confrontation carried a story that sounded more like myth than reality. A being of incomprehensible power had descended, claimed dominion over them, and been driven away by their ingenuity and willpower. Dr. Elena Voss, hailed as a hero among her peers, returned to civilization with an urgency that bordered on obsession. She knew what they had faced was far more than an alien or anomaly. It was a harbinger of something greater, a glimpse into a universe teeming with powers far beyond humanity's comprehension. This wasn't just a scientific breakthrough, Elena told a gathering of world leaders and scientific advisors. This was a warning. We've been noticed. And if they come back, we need to be ready. Her words sparked debates that spanned nations and ideologies. Some dismissed her claims as hysteria, an exaggeration of natural phenomena. But others, especially those who had worked alongside her during the encounter, knew the truth. Quietly, governments and private organizations began allocating resources to understand what had happened and to prepare for what might come next. The Unlikely Alliance. In the shadows of these discussions, a clandestine initiative emerged, the Terra Prime Coalition. Comprised of scientists, engineers, and strategists from across the globe, the coalition operated under one directive: to study the entity they had encountered and develop defenses against future incursions. Elena was at the heart of it, pouring her knowledge and experience into the coalition's efforts. She worked tirelessly alongside Arjun Patel, the technician whose quick thinking had turned the tide during their encounter. Together, they spearheaded Project Aegis, a multidisciplinary effort to harness human ingenuity into a viable countermeasure against godlike threats. One of their first breakthroughs came from studying the remnants of the disperser they had used against NYR Thalix. Though the device had been severely damaged, it contained trace energy signatures unlike anything known to science. By reverse engineering these readings, the team discovered a new form of energy, a frequency that could disrupt the entity's ethereal forms. Arjun dubbed it resonance energy, a force that could potentially level the playing field against such beings. But mastering it would take years, perhaps decades, and humanity didn't know how much time they had. The seeds of fear. Meanwhile, in the celestial realms, the elder gods debated what to do about Earth. NYR Thalix's encounter had rattled the pantheon, exposing vulnerabilities they had long ignored. Some gods argued for immediate action, an annihilation of humanity, before they could grow strong enough to pose a real threat. "Let us strike now, while they are still weak," said Azivariel, the Warbringer. Her form flickered with crimson light as she addressed the council. "A single blow, and this threat will be eradicated." But Kael Zorith, ever the voice of reason, raised a hand to silence her. "And risk proving their defiance correct? You saw what happened when NYR Thalix interfered. The humans fought back. If we act rashly, we may unite them against us." The council was divided. The elder gods were beings of unimaginable power, but they were not infallible. For all their strength, they feared the unknown, and humanity had become the embodiment of that fear. In private, NYR Thalix struggled with his shame. He had disobeyed the sacred decree, and in doing so, he had exposed himself to the very thing the gods feared most. Yet, beneath his regret lay a seed of doubt. "They are unlike anything I've seen," he confided to his father, Yltharion. "Fragile yet unyielding. Ignorant yet brilliant. They do not submit as other species do. They evolve." Yltharion regarded his son with a mixture of disappointment and understanding. "You have seen what we have long known," he said. "Humanity's strength lies not in their might, but in their defiance. They are creators of their own destiny, a force that cannot be controlled, only contained. That is why we fear them." The first movements in the shadows. On Earth, humanity's preparations continued. Project Aegis expanded, attracting brilliant minds from every field. Their work was shrouded in secrecy, hidden from the public, to prevent panic. But whispers of the project began to leak, sparking conspiracy theories and speculation. One such theory reached the ears of an unlikely figure, Max Calder, a renegade tech billionaire known for his outlandish ideas and relentless ambition. Max had long believed in extraterrestrial life and had funded private space exploration projects in search of proof. When he heard rumors of Elena's work, he demanded to meet her. "You need resources," Max said when he confronted Elena in her lab. "I have them." "You need vision." "I've got that too." "Let me help you." Elena was skeptical, but Max's resources were too valuable to ignore. With his backing, Project Aegis gained access to cutting-edge technology and funding that accelerated their work. The discovery of the veil. As their research deepened, the coalition stumbled upon an astonishing revelation. The energy signatures left by NYR Thalix hinted at a phenomenon they called the veil, a thin barrier between dimensions, separating humanity's reality from the domain of the gods. The veil, they theorized, was both a shield and a prison. It kept the gods from fully manifesting in the physical realm, but also limited humanity's ability to perceive or influence them. Understanding the veil became the coalition's top priority. Arjun, ever the optimist, saw the discovery as a turning point. "If we can understand the veil," he said, "we can learn to manipulate it." maybe even weaponize it. Elena, however, was more cautious. The veil isn't just a barrier, it's a balance. If we disrupt it, we could unleash forces we're not ready to face. Humanity's defiant spark. Back in the celestial realm, the elder gods intensified their surveillance of Earth. They watched as humanity uncovered secrets once thought unreachable, as they adapted and innovated with a speed that defied logic. For the first time in millennia, the gods felt truly vulnerable. They had always been the architects of existence, the unchallenged rulers of the cosmos. Yet, this small, fragile species had shown them something they had never encountered: defiance without fear. Kael'Zorth convened the triumvirate in a private meeting. "The time for observation is over," he said. "We must act, not with force, but with precision. Let us sow discord among them, weaken their unity. If we cannot destroy them, we must ensure they destroy themselves." The triumvirate agreed. Thus began the first subtle moves of the elder gods, influencing events on Earth to fracture humanity's progress. But on Earth, humanity remained unaware of these machinations. Driven by their unyielding will to survive, they continued to innovate and prepare, unaware that their greatest battle was just beginning. The stage was set. The elder gods had made their decision. They would not strike Earth directly, as they feared the consequences of a full-on confrontation. Instead, they would play the long game, a game of subtlety, manipulation, and division. They would sow the seeds of conflict among humanity, driving wedges between nations, factions, and individuals. Their goal: to prevent Earth from uniting against them. For millennia, the gods had ruled the cosmos with impunity, their influence vast and uncontested. Yet, for the first time, they found themselves facing an existential threat in the form of a species with boundless potential: humanity. They had seen Earth's fragile creatures stand tall in the face of their cosmic power, and they feared that, if left unchecked, humanity would rise to challenge the heavens themselves. In the celestial realm, the gods observed Earth's every move, manipulating events from the shadows. They worked through intermediaries, never revealing their true nature, but always ensuring that humanity's path remained fractured and uncertain. From within the halls of the elder gods' great temple, they set in motion a series of events that would shape the future of Earth. The manipulation begins. It began with whispers, subtle, almost imperceptible, but over time, these whispers would grow into roaring storms of chaos. The gods began by targeting the factions most capable of resisting them, the Terra Prime Coalition and its allies. Kael'Zorth, the leader of the triumvirate, had long understood that humanity's strength lay in its unity. But unity was a fragile thing, easily shattered if one could find the right point of leverage. In the case of Earth, the gods recognized the divide between the scientific community and the growing military-industrial complex. While the coalition's research into the veil and resonance energy was progressing rapidly, the military had begun to grow increasingly fearful of the potential for an alien invasion. In an underground meeting, Kael'Zorth's agents infiltrated both the military and the scientific community, feeding misinformation and fostering distrust between the two groups. Scientists like Elena Voss and Arjun Patel were increasingly isolated, their research dismissed as dangerous or unfounded by the more conservative factions in power. Meanwhile, the military, under the influence of dark whispers, began to demand more aggressive preparations for a potential conflict with extraterrestrial threats. They called for weapons of mass destruction capable of wiping out any foreign invaders, not realizing they were being manipulated into playing right into the elder gods' hands. As the fracture deepened, the once united coalition found itself splintering. Some factions, driven by fear of what might come, pushed for militarized solutions, while others, led by Elena and Arjun, called for continued research into nonviolent means of protection. The gods watched, amused by the petty squabbles of mortals, their ambitions clashing like fragile glass, ready to shatter. Elena's growing doubts. While the gods watched from afar, Elena Voss and her team continued their work. But cracks were starting to form. The once united vision of the Terra Prime Coalition was slowly being torn apart, and Elena was caught in the middle. As the pressure from both the military and more radical factions grew, Elena found herself questioning whether humanity truly had the capacity to survive the coming storm. She had once believed that the key to humanity's survival lay in unity. But now, as distrust and fear spread through the coalition, she feared that Earth might be doomed before it even had a chance to fight back. In private moments, Elena confided in Arjun, expressing her fears about the growing divide between factions. "The gods are playing us, Arjun," Elena said one evening, her voice trembling with a mixture of frustration and anxiety. "They're manipulating our every move, sowing division between us. And it's working." Arjun, ever the optimist, tried to reassure her. "We still have the resonance energy, Elena. We have a chance. We're not out of the game yet." But Elena wasn't so sure. Despite their breakthroughs, despite the progress they had made in understanding the veil and harnessing the new form of energy, she couldn't shake the feeling that they were walking into a trap. "The veil might be our salvation, but we can't even agree on how to use it," she said, staring at the holographic projections of their research. "And every day, the gods are getting closer. They know what we're capable of. They know that we can fight back." Arjun didn't have an answer. In the silence that followed, the weight of their impending battle seemed more overwhelming than ever. The global unraveling. At the same time, the gods were not content with just manipulating the scientific community. They also began to turn their attention to the political landscape of Earth, exploiting the fractures between nations. Through agents and intermediaries, they fed misinformation to world leaders, amplifying fears about an impending alien invasion. The gods stoked the flames of nationalism, turning countries against one another and preventing any kind of meaningful international cooperation. In the United States, military leaders pushed for a hardline approach to extraterrestrial threats, demanding that the government prepare for an all-out war with any potential invader. Meanwhile, in China and Russia, tensions reached a boiling point as military leaders began to accelerate their own research into alien weaponry, fueled by the belief that they needed to outpace the rest of the world before the first wave of extraterrestrial threats arrived. As the global political landscape descended into chaos, the gods smiled. As the global political landscape descended into chaos, the gods smiled. They had succeeded in sowing distrust and fear. Humanity was no longer united against a common threat. They were divided, and in that division lay their greatest weakness. The quiet tension in the heavens. While the gods reveled in their manipulation of Earth, a quiet tension was building within their ranks. Nyarthalix, the young god who had first encountered humanity, found himself increasingly disturbed by the events unfolding below. He had seen Earth's potential firsthand, and although he had been one of the first to suggest humanity's power, he could not help but feel a sense of pity for the mortals. They were being played like pawns in a cosmic game, and he was unsure of whether they even stood a chance anymore. He had been the one who had told his father, Yltharion, that humanity was different. Now, he was beginning to doubt the wisdom of the gods' approach. The more the elder gods interfered, the more humanity seemed to resist them. There was something inherently resilient about the human spirit, something that defied divine manipulation. And for the first time Nyarthalix wondered if the gods had made a grave mistake. Nyarthalix was not the only one who questioned the gods' actions. Kael'Zoreth, the leader of the Triumvirate, had begun to see the consequences of their interference. The balance of power in the universe was delicate, and every action they took had far-reaching consequences. Could the gods truly afford to risk it all by pushing humanity to the brink of war? The Council of the Gods convened again, and for the first time in millennia, their debates were not unanimous. Kael'Zoreth argued for a more measured approach, while Azivariel, the Warbringer, called for total annihilation. In the midst of this celestial turmoil, Nyarthalix found himself torn. He had seen what humanity was capable of, and he knew that if left unchecked, they could one day challenge the gods. But perhaps there was another way, a way that did not involve manipulation, fear, and division. But for now, the gods had already set their plan in motion. The world below would soon descend into chaos, and the elder gods would continue to watch from their distant thrones, awaiting the inevitable conflict. As the shadows of manipulation deepened on Earth, the gods continued to pull the strings from their distant celestial seats. Humanity, unaware of the true origin of their discord, spiraled into conflict, division, and fear. The Terra Prime Coalition, once a symbol of humanity's brightest hopes for survival, was now fractured. What had once been a unified front against an alien threat had become a battleground for ideologies, as those in power grew paranoid of one another's motives. The whispers from the elder gods grew louder, shaping global events like an unseen hand steering a ship through a storm. Earth's nations, divided and distrustful, accelerated their military advancements. Every faction had their own vision of how to face the impending threat, but none could agree on a single course of action. Meanwhile, beneath the surface of the political turmoil, the leaders of the coalition, Elena, Arjun, and a handful of their closest allies, were tirelessly working to find a way to unite humanity once more. But the pressure was mounting, and each day seemed to bring new challenges. Elena found herself haunted by doubts. Despite their technological progress and the discovery of resonance energy, nothing seemed to guarantee success. They had not yet unlocked the full potential of the Veil, and the division among their own people seemed insurmountable. The broken pieces of unity. The rift between the military and scientific factions had grown so deep that Elena was now facing opposition from all sides. The military was preparing for a worst-case scenario, an all-out alien invasion. They were building weapons that, they believed, would give them a fighting chance against any extraterrestrial forces. But these weapons were dangerous, not only to the invaders, but to Earth itself. General Marcus Greer, the head of the military faction, had become increasingly vocal in his demand for aggressive action. "We can't afford to sit around and wait for an alien force to arrive," he argued in heated meetings. "We need to show them that humanity will not be bullied. If they want to test us, let them come. We'll be ready." But Elena and Arjun knew that this approach was a gamble. They had seen the power of Nyr firsthand, and they understood the consequences of engaging in open conflict with a being of such vast strength. They feared that an escalation would not only doom Earth, but also provoke the gods into more direct action. Despite their best efforts, it seemed as though humanity's only path forward was one of war. The gods' manipulation takes shape. Back in the celestial realms, the gods were not idle. Nyr, who had once been adamant that humanity's defiance was their greatest strength, began to feel the weight of the gods' plans bearing down upon him. The manipulation was subtle but potent, a global chaos carefully constructed over centuries, each moment feeding into the larger picture. The gods were pulling the strings, ensuring that humanity remained divided, mistrusting, and fearful. But Nyr could see what the gods could not. There was something different about humanity. "They are not like us," Nyr confessed to his father, Yltharion. "Their capacity for growth, for defiance, it cannot be measured by the standards we have always held." Yltharion looked upon his son with a mixture of pride and concern. "You are seeing them through the lens of their potential. But you forget, Nyr, that their very defiance will be their undoing. They will fight until their last breath, but they will never be ready for what lies beyond the veil." Despite his father's wisdom, Nyr could not shake the growing sense of unease. He had always known that humanity's resilience was something the gods could never truly control, but now, as Earth plunged further into conflict, he began to question whether the gods had miscalculated. An unseen weapon. Deep within the corridors of the Terra Prime Coalition, a discovery was made, one that would change everything. Arjun Patel, always the more optimistic of the pair, had been working tirelessly on deciphering the full potential of resonance energy. While the team had already begun experimenting with it, they had not yet realized that the energy could be amplified, fed through the veil itself. This is it," Arjun said, staring at the data in front of him. "We can harness the veil. If we use the resonance energy in conjunction with it, we might be able to break through to their dimension, strike them before they can strike us." But Elena was more cautious. "What are we really talking about here, Arjun? If we disrupt the veil too much, we risk something far worse than just an alien invasion." We could open a portal directly to their realm, allow them to manifest on Earth. And if they get through? Arjun's face was pale, but his determination was clear. We have to try. We can't wait any longer. We've seen what they can do. We've seen their power. If we don't act now, we might not have a chance at all. Elena didn't like it, but she knew he was right. The gods were closing in on them, closing in on Earth. Every moment of indecision gave them more power over the outcome. Despite the risks, they had no choice but to move forward with their plans. The veil unravels. The decision was made. The team began the process of amplifying resonance energy, constructing a massive device designed to send a pulse of energy into the veil, unlocking its hidden potential. This was humanity's gambit. If they succeeded, they could level the playing field and send a powerful message to the gods. If they failed, however, they risked bringing about the very disaster they had tried to avoid. The energy levels reached critical mass as the device powered up, and a faint hum filled the air, a sound unlike anything the world had ever heard. As the pulse began to surge, the fabric of reality seemed to tremble. The veil itself began to distort, warping the space around them. "We're doing it," Arjun said, his voice barely audible over the increasing resonance. "We're opening it." But just as the pulse reached its peak, something unexpected happened. A rift appeared, a tear in the veil, that went far beyond the limits of their expectations. For a split second, Elena saw a flicker, a vision of an alien landscape, something both alien and familiar. But before she could fully comprehend it, the rift snapped shut with an explosive force. The device overloaded, sending shockwaves through the facility. Alarms blared, and the building shook violently. For a moment, the team was thrown into disarray, struggling to regain control. But when the chaos finally subsided, Elena looked at the screen and saw something that took her breath away. "Arjun, we didn't just open a rift. We've made contact. The gods feel the shift." Back in the celestial realm, the gods felt it. The disturbance in the veil did not go unnoticed. Nyr Thalix's heart raced as he felt the energy pulse echo across the cosmos, the faint reverberation of humanity's defiance. It was a challenge. A signal that they were no longer cowering in the face of the gods, but were actively reaching into the realm beyond. For the first time in history, the gods felt a deep, visceral fear. Humanity had cracked the door open, perhaps only a crack, but enough to make them realize that they might no longer be the rulers of the universe. The balance was shifting, and they could do little to stop it. Nyr Thalix was no longer sure of the gods' intentions. Their manipulation of Earth had gone too far. If humanity continued on this path, there would be no going back for anyone, not the gods, not the humans, and not even the universe itself. The tension that hung in the air after the catastrophic pulse was palpable. Within the Terra Prime Coalition's research facility, scientists scrambled to assess the damage, but all were equally preoccupied with the monumental consequence of their actions. The rift, though brief, was proof that humanity had unlocked something far greater than they had anticipated. They had reached into the very fabric of the universe, and the veil had responded. But had they unleashed something they could not control? Elena Voss and Arjun Patel stood amidst the wreckage of their lab, watching as emergency crews worked frantically to stabilize their systems. The walls were scorched, and parts of the building had collapsed under the force of the explosion. But in the midst of it all, one thing stood clear: their message had been sent. They had made contact. "It's done, Elena," Arjun said quietly, his voice tinged with awe and a touch of fear. "We've opened the door. They know we're here." "I know," Elena replied, her voice hardening with resolve. "And now, we wait." The gods' response. Back in the celestial realm, the elder gods were reeling. The faint echo of humanity's defiance had rippled through the very fabric of existence, and for the first time in eons, they were uncertain. The veil had not only been disturbed, but had revealed the potential for an entirely new path, one that the gods could not anticipate. Nyr Thalix, the god who had once been a staunch advocate for humanity's survival, felt an intense disturbance as the energy reverberated across the cosmos. His heart raced as he looked toward his father, Yltharion, and the other gods of the triumvirate. What does this mean? Nyarthalix demanded, unable to hide the tremor in his voice. They've sent a message. They've breached the veil itself. Yltharion's face remained impassive, but his eyes betrayed the growing unease he felt. It means they've done what we feared. Humanity has begun to harness powers beyond their understanding. A momentary rift like this is nothing, but if they continue, they will awaken forces that will tear apart the very foundation of our realm. Azivariel, the Warbringer, leaned forward, his voice thick with anticipation. Then it's time. We must strike before they grow stronger. We cannot allow them to continue meddling with the veil. But you do not understand, Nyarthalix interjected, his voice trembling with emotion. These mortals, their resilience, their curiosity, they are unlike anything we have ever encountered. They are dangerous in ways we cannot predict. If we attack now, we may seal our own doom. The gods fell silent, contemplating Nyarthalix's words. For the first time, there was doubt in the hearts of the mighty elder gods. But time was running out, and they could not afford to let humanity gain the upper hand. The global shift. News outlets scrambled to make sense of the inexplicable phenomenon. Governments, already on edge due to the rising tensions between nations, began to mobilize their forces. Some countries saw the breach of the veil as proof that humanity was not only vulnerable to alien threats, but was now a potential target for something far worse. Others, however, saw it as an opportunity, proof that the gods were not invincible, and humanity's technology had reached a level that could challenge the cosmic hierarchy. In the United States, General Marcus Greer, the figurehead of the military faction, saw the rift as the beginning of humanity's rise to power. This is our moment, he told his advisors, his voice filled with conviction. The gods have revealed their weakness. We can build on this. We can prepare for whatever comes next. Meanwhile, in Russia and China, governments launched countermeasures, scrambling to bolster their own defenses. A new arms race was emerging, but it was no longer focused on traditional warfare. It was now about manipulating the energy that had emerged from the rift. Elena and Arjun knew that they could no longer hide from the truth. Humanity was being pushed to the edge of war, and the gods' influence was everywhere. But instead of retreating, they chose to stand their ground. We've made our choice, Elena said, her voice unwavering. We've opened the door. There's no turning back now. The shifting alliances. In the wake of the rift, the Terra Prime coalition found itself facing an even greater crisis. The unity that had once held the group together was now threatened from within. Some factions, including powerful military leaders like General Greer, called for immediate action to prepare for an inevitable alien conflict. They demanded weapons and technologies that could turn the tide in their favor, regardless of the cost. Elena and Arjun, however, remained focused on their primary mission, understanding the resonance energy and using it to their advantage without risking the survival of humanity. They understood that they could not let fear and paranoia dictate their actions. But as the military and scientific factions continued to clash, it became clear that the rift had amplified humanity's divisions. Even those who had once been allies were now questioning each other's motives. Had they been too naive to think they could control such powerful forces? Would humanity ultimately be the architects of their own destruction? We have to make them understand, Elena said urgently to Arjun. This isn't about winning a war. This is about survival. We need to keep humanity united, or we risk everything. Arjun nodded. But how can we keep the peace when the world is on the brink of conflict? Everyone is afraid, Elena. I know, Elena said, the weight of her words heavy. But we must find a way to control the veil. We must prove that humanity is not just a threat but a force for good. The gods' final decision. Back in the celestial realms, the gods convened once more. The decision that had once seemed so clear was now clouded with doubt. Nyarthalix, having witnessed humanity's defiance firsthand, urged the elder gods to reconsider their approach. We cannot control them, he pleaded. They will not bow to us as other races have. We must adapt to their potential, not seek to destroy it. They are different. We should not underestimate them. Yltharian's voice boomed through the halls of the gods, his tone final. Enough. The time for debate is over. Humanity has dared to challenge the gods, and now they must face the consequences. With that, the gods made their decision. They would no longer operate in the shadows. The elder gods would reveal themselves fully to humanity, and a final confrontation would take place. The fate of the universe would be decided. The calm before the storm. On Earth, a storm was brewing. As the nations of the world began to prepare for the unknown, Elena, Arjun, and the remaining members of the Terra Prime Coalition knew that they stood at the precipice of something far greater than any of them could have anticipated. The rift they had opened was not just a doorway to another dimension, it was a call to arms, a signal to the gods that humanity had awakened. Now, humanity had no choice but to stand united in the face of the greatest challenge they had ever known. But would it be enough to survive the coming storm? As Elena stood before the holographic map of the world, watching the red lights of escalating military forces blink on the display, she felt a deep, quiet resolve settle within her. Humanity had always faced impossible odds. And now, as the gods prepared to descend upon them, the only question that remained was whether they would rise to the challenge, or fall to the weight of their own fears. The earth trembled in anticipation. The world had never been on the brink of such a monumental conflict. With the gods preparing their final assault and humanity grappling with its newfound powers, the stage was set for an unimaginable showdown. The fate of the entire universe rested on the actions of a species that had only recently begun to understand the true scope of its potential. In the Terra Prime Coalition's command center, the air was thick with tension. Elena Voss stood at the forefront, flanked by Arjun Patel and the remaining members of their team. On the screens in front of them, military strategists and scientists worked feverishly, analyzing data, coordinating with world leaders, and preparing for the imminent war. We've done everything we can, Arjun said quietly, his voice a mixture of anxiety and resolve. The veil is our only chance. If we can control it, we can keep them at bay. Elena nodded, her eyes hard with determination. The gods will come for us. We know that. But they'll face something they've never seen before. Humanity may be young, but we're not weak. We'll fight for our survival, together. The gods' descent. Above the earth, the celestial realm began to unravel. The gods, led by Nyarthalix and his father Yltharian, prepared for their final descent. The cosmic energies they commanded were unlike anything Earth had ever witnessed. Planets trembled in their wake, stars dimmed as their power surged. They were coming. Yet, Nyarthalix, despite his father's unyielding will, still felt conflicted. His heart ached as he looked down upon Earth, his thoughts torn between his loyalty to the gods and his growing admiration for humanity's resilience. He could see the power they held, power that could rival the gods themselves. It was a terrifying realization, one that only deepened his fear of what might happen if humanity truly mastered the veil. We must not hesitate, Yltharian's voice thundered, echoing in the vastness of space. Their defiance has already sealed their fate. They will not surrender. And if they refuse to bow to us, we will make them. But Nyarthalix knew the stakes. He could feel the weight of the universe pressing down on him. If humanity won, everything would change, there would be no going back. The old order would be shattered forever, and the gods would lose their dominance over the cosmos. I don't want to destroy them, Nyarthalix whispered, barely audible. They are too like us. I can't bring myself to do this. His words were met with silence, the weight of his doubt hanging heavily in the air. But the gods had already made their decision. The time for questioning was over. The cosmic forces aligned, and with a violent surge of energy, they descended toward Earth. The Earth prepares. On Earth, the response was immediate. As the first signs of the gods' descent became visible in the sky, governments across the globe scrambled to activate their defenses. The military might of the world was mobilized, but it was clear that no amount of weaponry would be enough to stop the incoming storm. Instead, the focus shifted to the Veil, humanity's only hope. The Terra Prime Coalition's scientists had worked tirelessly to harness the energy of the Veil, constructing a series of devices that would amplify the resonance energy and direct it at the gods. If they could hold the line long enough, they might just survive. But every passing moment felt like an eternity, and the gods' arrival was imminent. Elena stood at the helm, directing the final stages of the operation. Arjun and the team worked to ensure that their technology would work as planned. But even as they worked, Elena couldn't shake the feeling that they were walking into the unknown. What would happen when humanity faced the gods themselves? "The pulse is ready," Arjun said, his voice steady despite the tension in the air. "We just need to align the frequencies, and we can send a blast strong enough to disrupt their powers." Elena nodded. "Do it." The first clash. The skies above Earth darkened as the gods made their presence known. A swirling vortex of cosmic energy tore through the atmosphere, and from it emerged the elder gods, their forms radiating with unearthly power. Stars seemed to flicker and die in their wake as they descended, their immense presence casting a shadow over the planet. Humanity watched in awe and fear, unable to comprehend the scale of the beings before them. The gods were massive, their forms shifting and evolving with the ebb and flow of cosmic energy. But at the heart of their power stood Nyr Thalix, his golden eyes fixed on the world below. His heart, torn between duty and compassion, beat loudly in his chest. "You've made a grave mistake, mortals," Yltharian's voice boomed across the earth, the sound vibrating through every soul. "Your defiance will be your undoing." But humanity was not so easily cowed. As the gods approached, the Terra Prime Coalition's devices powered up, sending out a pulse of resonance energy that reverberated through the Veil, shaking the very foundation of the gods' power. The gods staggered for a moment, their forms flickering as the energy surged against them. For a brief instant, humanity saw a glimmer of hope. Perhaps they could win. Perhaps they could hold their ground. The battle for survival. The skies crackled with energy as the clash between humanity and the gods reached its peak. The gods, now fully revealed, unleashed their full might, sending waves of destructive energy toward Earth. But humanity, using the power of the Veil and the resonance energy, retaliated with unprecedented force. Buildings crumbled beneath the power of the gods, but the pulse from the Veil held them back, just barely. Nyr Thalix stood at the forefront of the conflict, torn between his loyalties to his father and his growing understanding of humanity's potential. He saw their fear, their desperation, but also their hope. They weren't just fighting to survive, they were fighting for something more, their future, their freedom. The pulse of energy surged again, stronger this time, and the gods were pushed back. Nyr Thalix, overwhelmed by the power humanity wielded, finally understood what had been so terrifying about them. They were not just defending their world, they were fighting for the very essence of existence itself. They were fighting to forge their own path in the universe. In a moment of realization, Nyr Thalix made his decision. He turned to his father, his voice pleading. "We can't destroy them. They deserve a chance to choose their own fate." Yltharian, seeing his son's defiance, finally understood. The battle had shifted. Humanity was no longer the helpless prey, they were the equal of the gods. The cosmic reckoning. With a final surge of energy, the Veil pulsed one last time, sending a shockwave that reverberated across the universe. The gods, for all their power, faltered. Their ancient rule had been challenged and broken. The universe had shifted, and the gods were no longer the unquestioned rulers of existence. The battle for Earth ended not with the annihilation of the gods, but with a new understanding, a realization that humanity, for all its flaws, had the power to shape its own destiny. The gods withdrew, not in defeat, but in recognition of the new order that had emerged. They had underestimated humanity, and now, they were forced to accept it. A new dawn. In the aftermath of the battle, Earth was forever changed. The gods had retreated into the cosmos, leaving humanity to rebuild. The war had been fought, but the real victory was the one that lay ahead, the victory of self-determination. Elena and Arjun stood together, watching the horizon as the first rays of sunlight broke through the clouds. They had faced an impossible enemy, and they had survived. The future was uncertain, but for the first time, humanity could face it on its own terms. The gods may be gone, Elena said softly, but we still have a long way to go. We've proven we can stand on our own. Now, we have to make sure we don't forget the lesson we've learned. Arjun nodded. We're not just surviving anymore, Elena. We're thriving. And we'll make sure the universe knows it. Humanity had proven that it was no longer a fledgling species, a pawn in the grand game of the cosmos. They were something more, something that even the gods feared. The story of humanity's rise was only beginning,